Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And today I want to talk about size. And what I mean by size is whether something is big or small or somewhere in between, and why and if that matters. And where this idea came from in this year's Creating the Impossible, and in my book, Creating the Impossible, one of the things I talk about is the big ask. And it's an expression I first heard in the nonprofit world and in fundraising in general, that there's this thing called the big ask, where, are you going to make the big ask, where you go to a potential donor and you ask for a substantial donation. And people gear up for months to make the big ask. And they psych themselves out about it, or they psych themselves up for it. And sometimes it goes well, and sometimes it doesn't. But a lot of the problem that people don't see is they've made it up as big. And the way you know that it's made up is because big compared to what? Big compared to the largest amount of money that's ever been raised in fundraising? Well, that doesn't happen very often. Big compared to what you've asked for before? Sure, maybe. Big compared to what would be a large donation for you personally, but might not be for the person you're asking? Okay, sure. The point is, we make up big. And the problem with making up big is most of us have a big problem with making a big ask. We would have no problem with a little ask, right? Think for yourself. Think about something that you could ask for help with. And think about what for you would be a little ask that you wouldn't really think twice about. You'd be happy to ask somebody. And what would be a big ask that you might feel like, that's a big ask. I'm not sure if I'm okay with that. And notice which one for you is more comfortable. Which one for you are you more likely to actually ask? Now, most people I do that would say, well, the little ask is fine. But they don't see that they've made up the big ask as big by comparing it to something that is smaller than it. Right? It's like there's a thing I remember from high school where, you tease people about who they hung out with. Like, did they hang out with people that made them look smart or made them look pretty or handsome? Or did they hang out with their peer group? I think we used to talk about it as shopping outside your aisle, who you would try to date and who you would try to hang out with. It's all comparative. It's all make-believe. But it has very real, tangible effects on what we do or don't do. Now, here's another exercise. Okay? If you got paper, you can do this on paper. You can do this in your head. But I want you to come up with 3 numbers. I want you to come up with a small amount of money, a medium-sized amount of money, and a large amount of money. Okay? And just take a minute. Write it down or make a mental note of those 3 numbers. Now, I've done that exercise in groups for years now, and I can tell you the numbers range from 1 penny to, what's the biggest one? It was in the trillions of dollars, the big number. And it was the amount that the person said that they could buy their own country with. And so that was like the big amount. And when you start to see, my guess is your numbers were your little number was not a penny and your big number was not 25 trillion or whatever it would cost to buy your own country. And you start to see, I'm making up what's big and what's small, but then I'm believing that big things are harder than small things to get. So I have this almost like pre-connection, this predetermined set of thoughts about what it takes to do something big, to make a big number, or to spend a big number. And I've got a completely different set of associations with a small number. And one of the reasons that I like money as an example of this is because most people can remember how their number has changed. Remember what felt like a big amount of money to you as a kid? And what felt to you like a little amount of money? Now, my guess is that whatever the biggest amount of money you could imagine as a kid does not feel that big to you as an adult. Now, maybe not, but I know for me, like I remember $20. Oh my gosh, that was a dream. Like once or twice a year, I'd get $20 together. and I was set. I could buy all the baseball cards I wanted. The world was my oyster. I could go to the arcade. Remember arcades, kids? I could go to the arcade and be there all day and maybe part of the next day on $20 worth of quarters. Well, now, I mean, even my kids don't think $20 is a lot of money. Like, I'll give them $20 for dinner, and they're going, Dad, that's not going to cut it. And I'm like, really? I mean, we live in L.A. I still think $20 should cut it. But the point, and I do have one, is that we make up size. We make up big and small, and then we suffer from what we made up. And so if you want to play with this, one of the best ways that I know to play with this is something that my friend Paul McKenna and I came up with for his book, I Can Make You Rich. And we called it the wealth thermostat. And it was just a way of noticing that people tend to have about the amount of money that feels comfortable to them. And if they get too much more than that, they'll find some way to spend it or lose it. And if they have too much less than that, they'll dig down and work really hard to get back up to whatever their size that they've decided is okay is. And it's a lot like a thermostat. When it gets too low, it kicks on the heat. When it gets too high, it kicks on the cooling. So it maintains a temperature. Well, one of the things we noticed in studying people, we did research into sort of happy millionaires and miserable millionaires and happy billionaires and miserable billionaires. And one of the things we noticed is that the happy millionaires and the happy billionaires, just their idea of big and small was very different. Now, you might say, well, yes, of course, because look how much they've got. But actually, in many cases, they were just brought up with a different make-believe. So I remember Paul saying when he went to school, a lot of his math homework was it would be things like, if Billy has an apple that costs 10 pence and Johnny has an orange that costs 15 pence, how much does Billy need to give Johnny in addition to the apple to make the trade? And I remember one of the guys, particularly a film director that we interviewed in relation to the book, saying that when he was in school, the maths questions were, your father has just bought a large manufacturing firm in Buenos Aires for $14 million. Now, you could just see the thermostat was completely different. And because that comfort zone was made up at a different level, everything that person did around money just worked at a different level. In other words, we tend to find our own level, not seeing that we made up the scale. So that's for you to play with and explore. Until next time, have fun, learn heaps, and I'll talk with you soon.